Welcome everyone to our first Industries Live of 2025. We have two excellent guests on today. We'll have Snowflake and DataArt that will be speaking with us, and I will be co-hosting today with Addy. And my name is Dr. Karen Hildebrand. I lead our partner solutions architects for several industries, including financial services, which will be what we're focusing on today. Addy.
Hey folks, I'm Addy Dubhashi. I'm part of the financial services partner team, and we work with our partners to build industry-changing solutions. I've been with AWS for 6.5 years, and I've built these solutions across technology and consulting partners. I'm really excited about today because we're going to dive into data. And as part of these topics, I'm super excited to think about how our partners, technology and consulting partners, are helping our customers really transform their impact, going after those business use cases and solving line of business challenges. So I'm really excited to dive in today into two main topics, one with our partner Snowflake and two with DataArt, who's an integration and consulting partner, both who have specializations in financial services with AWS. To start with,
Addy, we're going to have a couple guests that are going to be joining us, right? So should we bring them on screen?
Absolutely. I'm super excited to have in our market development teams. These are specialists who meet with our customers and have a pulse and an understanding of the industry asks that our customers need. So getting that combined view of what's happening in the industry, how we're solving those challenges is going to be super exciting to discuss. So let's dive in. We're going to have Jimmy and Richard on. I've known Jimmy for a really long time, working across AWS and Snowflake. Jimmy has decades of experience in capital markets, banking, and really excited to have you on, Jimmy. Also, Richard, who's been an ex-CIO managing director at Barclays. Richard, thank you for joining us, and keen to have your insights as we dive in today on some of the trends and market asks that you're seeing across data. Jimmy, I'll pass it to you for a quick intro.
Yeah, thank you for that, Addy, and truly a pleasure to be here with you, Richard, and Karen, and the team. Look forward to a reunion of many great minds and hopefully some value for the audience and what we're talking. So again, Jimmy McGeehan, I look after the banking, capital markets, and payments subverticals here at Snowflake. I've been here roughly 3 years, but my history goes back close to 30 years within the industry, working across some of the world's largest banks, UBS, HSBC, Wells Fargo, et cetera, hopefully experiencing firsthand both the good and bad that can come with some of the challenges around bringing together legacy technology to a business outcome, sometimes where it's harming the risk or the regulatory efforts of firms, or it's the idea of the challenge around actually producing effective outcomes for customers. But looking forward to the conversation today and talking here with Richard, and love to kick it over to you.
Very good. Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah, we're really pleased to have you, and thanks, Addy and Karen. Richard Caven, as Addy said, I an ex-banker with some dirt under my fingernails, if you like. I joined AWS nearly 7 years ago now from Barclays, where I was the COO of the global treasury function. And I spend a lot of time with my customers at AWS thinking about business needs and how do we work backwards from those requirements to find the right technology solutions and the right partners to deliver that business value. And because I've spent a long time in my career in and around treasury, finance, and risk functions, I'm really delighted to have this opportunity to talk about how we can start to solve some of the enduring challenges, I think, that the industry has faced as AWS and with Snowflake as well. So, Jimmy, we've got to get into the detail. It's all very well talking about ourselves. Let's spend some time really defining the challenge that we think our customers, banks in financial services, or finance functions in banks, I should say, face. What the trends we're seeing in the industry at the moment. We both spend a lot of time with our customers talking to them and understanding that. And then perhaps we can dive into a little bit more detail around some of the solutions that we are working together with to help those customers deliver that business value.
Yeah. Appreciate that, Richard. And let's start at the highest level, right? Let's talk about the industry challenges and some of the thematics in the industry that are exacerbating those challenges and how people are actually activating it. So you can't sit here today in 2025 without understanding the cost of capital. Interest rates are dramatically higher, right? So for anyone in a finance function, the cost of funding to run your business on a day-to-day basis is dramatically higher. Interest rates moved from next to nothing over the past 15 years to within a period of 18 months, a 40-year high in interest rates, and the speed and change of that was dramatic. we're also coming to a time of change. The only consistent post-pandemic is that consumer trends and how people are living is changing, right? All of that has created an uncertainty around existing business models and how to create true smart decision intelligence with agility to make better decisions, because the world truly has changed, both from a cost of capital and how people are consuming, and underlying economic drivers of activity are different. And I think that brings us back to the data. What feeds your decision intelligence, right? If you think about finance, it's all fed by payments data, revenue recognition, reconciliation processes. And traditionally, legacy siloed technologies, the real challenges become unifying that information into a source of truth that can be rectified. And if I'm a CFO or anyone within a line of business, I need to understand, where should I focus my time? Given all of this change and the growth of data, how do I harness that into a focused strategy for execution? And I think this is where finance is a great place to start, because if you think about finance data, as you well know, Richard, coming from your days at Barclays and the treasury function, the spine of any organization and the underlying blood flow that exists within it is its finance and revenue recognition. And then from there, helps you understand your risk, helps you understand your underlying cash predictability and funding needs, marketing, all of the offshoots of that finance data and how to transform is really how it's helping our underlying banking customers service their customers better while maintaining a profitable focus. Because as all of these trends and the growth of this data has increased, it's created a tough decision intelligence of how to prioritize their business. So I've said a lot there.
Yeah.
Before this conversation. Go ahead,
Jimmy,
Karen.
I'm going to jump in there because it looks like we have a lot of live viewers that are joining us from all over the world. So welcome to everybody. We have Javier in Chile. We have Nadia, I believe, that is in Toronto. We have somebody from Angola, India. Are there any differences in trends that you'd like to mention around global footprint?
Yeah, I think from each country, obviously, first of all, from a data perspective, many times have really been focused on data sovereignty, right, and underlying control of the assets within their world, right? That's something I know that our friends here at AWS are dealing with on a daily basis. But I also think the individual rules, taxation that they have to deal with, both from a regulatory and a finance perspective, are uniquely differentiated. We just want to help break down those silos to help those customers understand that decision intelligence more quickly. But of course, the underlying rules and regulations, please understand and discuss with your local finance and accounting professionals.
Well done, because we have Sweden and Germany that are chiming in now. So great lawyerly response there. Well done, Jimmy. Back to you.
I think one of the things I think we have to kind of appreciate, right, is the cloud is just democratized access. We're talking about technological changes that were in the banking world used to be conversations over decades. We talk about systems that are running for 8 years, 10 years, 30 years. And what we're seeing is a possibility of just leapfrogging ahead. And so if we kind of think about that global lens, I think, we had the center of data organized at these large banks and institutions, but the air gap for a mid-tier bank or a disruptive fintech is significantly lower. They're able to start off really fast. They're able to move in a very nimble way. And that's because they're able to take off from the ready platforms and blueprints that are available for them to access. And so, one of the main things that we have to probably assess and dive into is how do we help accelerate these customers? And so if we kind of join that up between what's happening in the Asia Pacific region, where they're able to leapfrog and adopt partners like Snowflake on AWS, or, under the regional teams in EMEA who are having to kind of think really about data residency requirements and how they can comply with regulations, I think these best practices are really emerging. And what's happening is they're able to leverage off each other in financial services, because we kind of connect in the FS industry as one world. When you're solving it in Singapore and you see a best practice, that's going to very quickly get leapfrogged into Latin America, who says, look, I really like that pattern there. I'm going to use that for my industry. And Richard, you're really seeing this happen across a number of CIO conversations, but I wanted to pass it to you on what you're seeing on that lens.
Yeah, thank you, Addy. Yeah, I'm going to torture Jimmy's analogy of financial information being the blood that runs through the veins of banks, because of course he's absolutely right. I think to your point about some of the newer born in the cloud financial institutions that have been able to set themselves up using modern technology from day one, and dare I say it also from a blank sheet of paper, rather than inheriting 20, sometimes 30 years of incremental software development to deliver against objectives which were never really in the mind of those that are building the systems in the first place. Regulation, changing in products and services, organizational structure, all add to the complication here. What we have are the arteries that blood flows through, often being clogged. And that slows down information. It causes people to question information as well. And look, I remember back at my time at Barclays, it will be no different in any other financial institution. The accountants spending hours after work figuring out numbers, identifying data, sourcing it, preparing it for the processes that they needed to meet their internal and their external stakeholders. So let's be really explicit here, because those stakeholders are the most important. It's regulators, it's auditors, and it's senior management wanting to make really good decisions about the organization and where they place those resources. As Jimmy mentioned, if you've got a limited amount of capital, you want to make sure that you're putting the capital in the part of the organization that's going to generate the most return from that. And that's as true of leverage as it is of liquidity at the end of the day. So really trying to deliver that value more efficiently, more effectively is absolutely key. And if I go a little bit further, and this is the last time I promise to use the blood analogy. For those who are squeamish, I apologize doubly so. But if you can improve the nutrient quality of that data with more insight that allows you to make better informed data-driven decisions, then you're making even more progress. So more free-flowing data and more insightful data becomes a real key importance to that. Now, the issue is that those legacy systems and processes often rely upon an awful lot of manual processes. Because most of the time, the processes are a bit manual because you're having to work around the infrastructure that you have in the first place. Because, I don't know, a new regulation like the Fundamental Review of a Trading Book, really great example, hit the industry a couple of years ago. The finance functions weren't designed and set up to deliver against that using the plumbing, using the veins. Sorry, I'm doing it again, so I wouldn't. You know what I mean, that the body corporate had. So we had a lot of success working with customers to actually build new reporting mechanisms that sourced data and allowed a finance function to meet that regulatory requirement in spite of, if you like, the technology that they were using at the time. And that's just an example, I think, of how the technology is finding new and better solutions to what are enduring problems.
And Richard, I think you gave us a great visual there. I think all our industries live covers healthcare and life sciences. So you just bridged from financial services and created a visual for healthcare and life sciences. So you're all good. And for those that are joining us, please keep entering questions in the chat for Jimmy and Richard. Addy and I are monitoring that while Richard and Jimmy are chatting. So feel free to ask any questions there live.
So I'm just going to carry on for a little bit, because the issue with a really great analogy is everyone falls in love with the analogy and then forgets about the business needs and the problems. So I just want to say a couple of things here. So data quality is always an issue. Improving data processes so that they are more streamlined and require fewer accountants to work into the middle of the night just doing the manual basics have got to be a good thing. And then equipping those finance team professionals with analytical tools so that they can harness the value that data is what really modernization is all about. We're not sitting here talking about technology for its own sake. We're talking about it because of those business outcomes that are so important to an organization.
And Richard, I think you're calling out it's the analogy and how it connects back. And the reason we're kind of all going back to biological systems is just the complexity they bring. And again, in financial services, we represent equally complex systems. This is money flow. This is the ability to identify risk, all of it in real time. And so I appreciate the analogy because it does really kind of create that resonant complexity that I think we're all kind of seeing in financial services. I think one of the best ways for us to kind of make this real is, what have you seen as a real world example? And Jimmy, maybe we'll pass it to you first, but, a real story of how that played out, common challenges that a customer faces, what was their journey, and how was Snowflake kind of solving for that with AWS?
Yeah, I'm happy to dive right into that. So my story is going to come from a top 10 US bank who's really gone through this transformation. But before doing that, I want to set the context. So let's put ourselves in the mind of any bank globally, right? What are the three key things they're thinking about? 1, don't lose money. 2, don't get your name in the newspaper. And 3, if you forget anything, please reread 1 and 2. So let's set that as the framework of what we're thinking about here in the banking industry, to put yourself in the mind of your customer, because financial services predicated on physical data movement, lots of potential rooms for errors, concerns. The reality becomes that in a industry predicated on physical data movement from front, middle, and back office, how do you simplify that process to enhance your decision intelligence? So this top 10 US bank really realized that they were a growth by acquisition bank, as many in the US and many globally are, right? There's going to be huge amounts of banking consolidation. How do you stay competitive while rationalizing legacy technology over 10, 20, 30, 50 years between these organizations? How do you consolidate? So they realized they had to consolidate systems of record. And their mission was to, at this top 10 US bank, who was absolutely built on AWS, was to say, now that I've landed my data in the cloud, how do I bring together the freshness of that finance function to understand the lifetime value of my customers, to prioritize my strategy and execute upon it? So what we wanted to help them do was, using Snowflake on top of AWS, was think about how do they streamline their revenue reporting? How do they then take that by line of business function and prioritize the most valuable clients, to then think about ad tech, martech optimization and personalized interactions? In the banking world, Rich is going to tell you better than anyone, banking has become extraordinarily digitized, but the reality becomes is, how are you connecting with your customers when they have so many other choices of open banking, choices of fintechs they can utilize, right? I have 4 children, ages 24 down to 16. They don't care what the brand of the bank says on the front of the marker. What they care about is the experience they get from the services provided, and in the interface they can get ease of access to data and information. So this top 10 US bank realized that fear factor. They want to rationalize and bring all of those finance systems of record to one place. They then wanted to help take that reference data, underlying ERP data, and then the unstructured data when they have their customers coming in, and bring it to one place so that they can have a better customer experience when someone wants a loan, while then prioritizing their revenue functions to understand their clients better, to give them targeted offers out the other side, and prioritize what they're doing from a business execution function. This has really offered them productivity and agility at scale to enhance a revenue and return on investment, of which has direct line of auditability to technology modernization. So I said a lot of things there. Happy to kick it back to the team. This example is something that's been a shining light, where I think many other both regional and large GSIBs are having to think about managing their risk more effectively, back to my original analogy of the top 3 things. But how are you then creating a personalized connection, leveraging revenue and consumption data back to your customers?
Yeah.
Yep.
So you talked a lot about unifying all of that siloed data and what the value and the benefit is. Can you talk a little bit about, as you see that value come to realization, like what's the timeline that we're talking about here? What can people be expecting when they're going into this consolidation of siloed information and actually realizing that benefit?
Yeah, this is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. There's no light switch that can be flipped. However, it's aligning a very well effective and functioning data strategy to an execution strategy. And this is where it's going to dovetail nicely with DataArt and other GSI partners and other SI partners we work with, is how do you deliver this? And I think it's really then creating the roadmap of thinking about which part of the finance data you wish to transform first. Where's the biggest pain, right? Is it really about coming up with liquidity risk to understand your LCR reporting on a daily basis? Or is it actually then providing that personalized customer experience to understand how you hyper-personalize your marketing, as you're fearful of that sort of competitive edge sprawl to other either fintechs or other regional banks? I think it's that type of decisioning, and then having a staged function in conjunction with your partners, how to deliver on that not trying to swallow the elephant, just a huge lift and shift. Which pieces do you want to break down first to realize the execution and realization of value on that strategy?
And what you're touching on, Jimmy, is super important because, you know, the nature of what you're looking to model and the risk you're looking to check would also be directly related to, well, where are you doing this modeling of risk? You may want to model your risk very close to the exchange. You may have certain data residency or regulatory resiliency requirements that require your data to be in a certain fashion, available in a certain way, very easily to key stakeholders. And so I think one of the main aspects of our partnership really kind of calls out to, hey, let's build to where your data is needed for the key stakeholders who need it, but also let's make sure that we're compliant around that data residency requirement or resiliency requirement by distributing the availability of that data and cataloging it for that ease. So it's something that we've really been architecting in financial services between Snowflake and AWS, just making it really easy for our customers to take off from that base technology architecture and say, look, here's where we can get you. Here's when our GSI or consulting partners come in and help you kind of, get that right for your exact need. And it's a certain set of steps, but it's way faster than it used to be, if I remember.
Yeah. And if I do want to kick this to Rich, and I think this analogy, there's a bank that comes out of the UK, one of the a very substantial one that was doing their liquidity risk reporting for LCR on top of AWS and Snowflake. They were able to collapse their infrastructure that was on-prem, something that was taking them 12 to 18 hours into 4 to 6 hours. They were able then to free up capital that was on reserve that was being held in collateral, not being able to use for loans or for net interest income. And you're able to do that while protecting the brand risk of the bank at a fraction of the cost of their on-prem system, that because you've modernized your infrastructure, now you have accurate information down to all of the cash flows of your business with a direct line of auditability to your modernization path.
Yep.
This is the type of work that's specifically on finance data, why it's so valuable.
So valuable. That those words alone. What I love about that example is that with that customer example, what we were delivering was business value, because that freed up liquidity has a cost associated with it, or a revenue generating opportunity with it, and that's you can calculate that. So oftentimes when you're trying to implement or drive modernization in a technology process, it's sometimes really hard to be able to see the output from that, and more importantly, be able to quantify it. And actually, with modern data architectures and technologies, we're beginning to get to the point where you absolutely can, and that changes really the decision making for senior executives, because they can say, if I'm going to spend this much on technology, I'm going to spend this much improving my data here, then I can set that against a real business value, a tangible business value at the end of the day. And that begins to sort of help the organization accelerate the changes that they're looking to make. But I want to say one thing, which was implied with what you said, Jimmy, and that is that the technology is not a silver bullet here, right? Because the processes still require organizations to clean up their data, to have a different and better, dare I say it, culture about data in their organizations, how they curate it, how they use it, how they manage it. They need to change the way that processes operate. So give you a really good example, and I know we're talking banking today, but we've got an insurance customer who's able to close their monthly books on the final day of the month. Now, that wasn't because the technology enabled them to do that, as much as they used the technology to change the processes which allowed them to do that. And that's people, and it's governance and control, and it's data, and it's all of those things. The point is that modern technology today, cloud-enabled technology, makes it easier for you to do this. And I think as commentators on this call, we could be guilty sometimes of saying to the industry, oh, no, you want to do it like this. This is how you should do it. Why haven't you done this before? The point is, these issues are often really well understood and known by the industry. The challenge is actually in delivery, in execution. And why I think cloud and our partners like Snowflake have the potential to make such a difference is because there's a change in the nature of the technology, so that financial institutions and banks are not trying to do the same thing to fix the same problems using the same tools and expecting a different outcome. I wish Einstein, whoever I think, who I'm stealing the quote from. That is insanity. Cloud, in the way that it is delivered, in the way that you can experiment, you can build, you can create secure, compliant architectures, test them, change them. If they don't work, close them down and create something new and something different, gives the business people in an organization the opportunity to work more closely hand in hand with the technologists to actually deliver on those business outcomes at the end of the day. And that, I think, is what's different. And that is what makes me excited, dare I say it, about the opportunity that we're talking about here today, because we're doing something, we're solving traditional problems with a new solution. And that's really, really powerful.
So I have a quick question that's come in from our chat here. So by the way, thank you to everybody who has indicated where you're coming from. We have some great guests. We have Uganda, Brazil, Morocco, pretty wide spectrum. So fantastic. Thanks for joining us on Industries Live. But one of the questions that came in from the UK was, tell us a little bit more about how Snowflake thinks about resiliency and disaster recovery, and particularly when you're thinking about that in the context of banking. Jimmy, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's no question that every executive boardroom is thinking directly about this. Cloud has become critical infrastructure, right? And how you manage not only the governance control of your assets, but obviously the ability to have that response time and agility is essential. This is where we work with, obviously, we have our most native integrations with AWS, but we can work with other cloud providers if banks do need that, and if that's what customers are looking for. But I think it is the heaviest focused on our side across the governance and resilience side, because without having that availability of the data on demand from your customers, you cannot meet your customer retention and customer growth goals as you provision services across lending, treasury, other types of needs. So I think that is exactly where the focus has been for Snowflake on the resilience side.
Yeah, it's a non-negotiable for all of us, I think, in that regard. Regulation is there now that's asking financial institutions to demonstrate they understand their critical processes and how they manage them in a range of different plausible outcomes. It's front and center to everything that we do.
All of our friends in Europe know DORA better than anyone. Digital Operational Resiliency Act. We are there hand in hand with our partners and our CSPs, especially with AWS in that light.
Absolutely. We do a lot of briefings on that. So
one of the important aspects to remember here is how we're able to actually help our customers and teams who want to build in this space as well. And so one of the things that our teams have done as part of the partnership has just made it really easy for our learners, our developers, our customers to kind of take off from, here's a best practice or a blueprint that you can apply. I'm thinking about last year where the Snowflake team and AWS worked really closely in setting up a plan to say, hey, we want to speak to customers across the North America region, and we're going to show them how we can help you deploy a compliant and resilient network for your data seamlessly. I think a lot of this content, again, gets digitized and published. So something we look forward to is making sure the group here and the audience here is able to get access to these blueprints. And so you're going to see more content coming out like this. But if you are looking at kind of starting off, you can access Snowflake on the AWS marketplace, get started, and our teams are able to kind of give you some of those blueprints to take off from.
One I'd love to throw out there to the teams and for the group listening globally really fast is that data-centric AI. This is where the best of breed of both Snowflake and AWS come together. Richard talks specifically about data quality challenges. Using AWS's Data Wrangler and SageMaker, taking that machine learning capability, moving up the stack to get that higher level of decision intelligence, leave the undifferentiated heavy lifting to the experts, while then utilizing the tools to have high data quality, specifically using for finance where you can have that predictability of cash flows, to have your CFO office understand their own funding better, while then having understanding of your risk, regulatory, and customer marketing needs is essential. But data-centric AI framework between Snowflake and AWS has been published.
I think we just did a very quick transition from Snowflake to DataArt. So I guess we will have to recap with Jimmy and Richard around what it was that were their last parting thoughts to all of our audiences offline, which is a great segment for our future Industries Live. But with that, let's make sure that we welcome on our next partner, which is DataArt. Addy.
I'm super excited to have DataArt and Alvin from the AWS team join in today. Just kind of looking at the conversation we had with Jimmy and Richard before this, we're talking about how the capability of Snowflake and AWS can really be transformative. But the question comes to customers on how. And I'm super excited to have DataArt and Peter come and talk about how we're really helping customers on the ground understand their challenges. And Alvin, you've seen this play out in numerous ways across regions and geographies as you lead our data strategy across financial services. So I'll pass it over to you all for a quick intro. Peter.
Absolutely. Addy and Karen and Alvin, my pleasure to be here. Excellent first 30 minutes, by the way. Couldn't tear myself away from the screen. I'm Peter Wyhansky. I'm with DataArt. DataArt is a consulting partner. We're focused very much on the FSI vertical in addition to a few others, but we've been helping our financial services customers in capital markets, asset management, and a few other sub-verticals modernize and transform their technology, which for the greater part of the past decade or so has meant taking them to the cloud. And a lot of that work has been focused on data. My role specifically is I run our AWS Alliance. In addition to that, I spend a fairly large proportion of my time with our financial services customers directly working with them on engagements, and happy to talk about some of them hopefully later in this conversation.
Hey, Addy, Karen, thanks for having me. Peter, nice to meet you. So my name's Alvin Huan. I'm on the market development team for financial services here at AWS with a focus on data analytics and machine learning. So really what that means is I get to work with financial institutions of all sizes, right, from the fintech startups up to all the way up to the global financial services customers around their data analytics and machine learning journeys. And one of the benefits I get to see is some of the trends, right, across the industry. And some best practices and key themes. So happy to share those.
Can I ask the basic first question, given how many viewers we have from around the world? So Kenya, Ireland, I don't think I've called out India lately. We have a number from the USA, Poland. Peter, where does DataArt serve for customers?
So our customers are predominantly concentrated in North America and UK and Ireland. We do have customers in continental Europe as well, but those two markets account for over 90% of our customer base. As far as our delivery capability, we have over 30 locations around the world. We're concentrated in Europe and Latin America.
Perfect. Thank you. That super helps all of our viewing audience to know where they can be connecting with you in DataArt.
And Karen, just for those who just kind of joined in, Karen and I are part of the partner solutions team for industries. We really focus on our partners on AWS helping our customers solve for their industry challenges. What really is exciting to us about this series is the ability for us to show our customers how our partners and AWS come together to solve for their line of business challenges. This is through technology offerings, consulting capabilities, but all in all, making it really easy for our customers to leapfrog ahead and disrupt their own businesses and their own sectors as they see value and gain efficiencies in financial services. I've been with AWS closing in on 7 years, and I've done this across financial services and our partners. Karen, maybe a very quick recap and intro from you as well.
Yeah, sure. I'm Dr. Karen Hildebrand, and I lead our partner solutions architects across a number of industries, including financial services that we're talking about today, as well as healthcare and life sciences, media and entertainment, games, sports, and telco. So I'm excited to be speaking at Industries Live today, which is Tuesday from 8 to 9 a.m., but you can mark your calendars for every other week from 8 to 9 a.m., and we will be having our industries partners sharing their stories. Financial services will be every month, and then every 2 weeks interspersed with that will be our media and entertainment, games, and sports partners.
Oh.
Awesome. So Alvin, do you want to kick us off and tell us a little bit about the trends that you're typically seeing?
Yeah, happy to, Karen. So if you kind of think about data modernization as a whole, right? Really the key objective there is to reduce the time that it takes to get insights from your data, right? That's kind of the overall goal. And if you kind of look at it from a evolution perspective, right? Maybe going back 10 years, starting back in say 2015, right? A lot of the focus back then was really around the scale, right? It's around capacity issues, right? So if you have things like the U.S. presidential election, or if you have COVID, right? You saw the volatility in the markets, you saw the increase in volumes in the markets, right? So it was really about how do we handle these spikes in volumes, right, and still meet our SLAs. Now, as you get to the start of kind of 2020s, right, we started seeing customers focus more around kind of event-driven architectures, right? So they understood, right, how to handle the scale, how to leverage the capacity of the cloud to address some of these spikes in volumes. But now they're more focused around, hey, can we kick off a process as soon as a new piece of data comes in, right? So a great example back during 2020, right, was around COVID and the PPP applications that we had here in the US, right, was, hey, as those applications come in, right, can we kick off that job, right, immediately, right? And oh, by the way, have full lineage, right? So you have where the data came from, when it was uploaded, what data was extracted from the document, and what downstream systems it fed to, right? And now I think more recently, what we see customers focus on is really around data discovery, right? So I think a good analogy there is, they really want to make that data discovery experience very similar to as you shop for a product on Amazon.com, right? So just like on Amazon.com, you can shop for toothpaste and basketballs and really any product you want, right? And when that product comes up, there's a quick description of the product, and then people saying how good or bad that product is, right? And really shopping for data sets or data products, if you will, should be no different, right? You're just searching for a different type of product, right? So that's kind of the mental model, right, that many of our customers are having around their data transformation and data modernization journey.
And I think what you're calling out, Alvin, is just such a foundational layer as customers really look at Gen AI and the direction it's going to take, all of those insights that we look at. And so any organization that wants to maximize on Gen AI would need those foundational catalogs in place, their governance and entitlement controls, just that ease of access to streaming data so that you have the latest news as you're recommending to a customer the right kind of context through the natural language that Gen AI brings us. So it's such a foundational element for any Gen AI strategy being designed today as well.
So Peter, do you want to tell us a little bit about how DataArt thinks about making data available the first time? And then what is the kind of questions that you can interrogate from your data once you have it available?
Sure, happy to do it. And again, I think what Alvin mentioned earlier is right on the money. It's and I like, Addy, your use of the word foundational. I think foundational is right, meaning we're really looking at things that you could even characterize as basic, but sometimes because of the speed of technological change, organizations tend to struggle with those seemingly basic things because they're really not basic once you get down to them. What was indicated in the previous half hour, our focus as an SI partner is on execution. It's on the how. We work with wonderful partners such as Snowflake and other third-party vendors, but also with platform providers like AWS to help our customers take their technology estate to where it needs to be in order to, enable the creation and maintenance of products and services, an increasing number of which is based on data. I mentioned earlier that in the FSI space, one of our biggest areas of focus is capital markets, data providers, index providers, and of course, I'm going to risk being thrown off the podcast for using the blood analogy again, but for those businesses, in a very direct sense of the word, the data is the lifeblood of their entire business. It lies at the core of what they actually sell to their customers, and so being able to get those foundational baseline things right is super important. What we find, and I'm not sure, Karen, if this is a direct answer to your question, but what we find in the majority of cases is, and I'm not going to break any new ground here. Customers tend to feel or find themselves locked in or constrained by a history of prior technology decisions or a history of acquisitions, where they end up with something resembling a patchwork of the ways they ingest and then manipulate data and then serve it up. And so this over time, it slowly becomes less and less manageable. And so what customers are looking for is simplification and universality, a universal approach. Do it the same way, the right way, the good way. as much as you can. Also, if we could walk away from using a million different tools to a handful, or maybe a platform, or a platform plus a handful of easy to implement tools, that is the trend. That is very much the desire of the technology leaders and technology teams that we tend to work with. Again, by virtue of focusing on execution, we tend to spend the majority of our time with technology leaders and technology teams and organizations. And so the other foundational thing is, of course, governance, security, compliance. That comes very much as a capability that is brought on by modern platforms such as Snowflake, such as even AWS native stack. That here's the thing. What's really, really curious is, I think here's what I want to quote Lewis Carroll. So the fact that the technology is changing so fast is at the same time a huge strength, but also it's a bit of an issue, because just keeping up almost feels like a full-time job. I think, what was the Brett Queen that said, in order to stay in place, you have to run as fast as you can. And if you want to get anywhere, you need to run twice as fast as that. That's more or less the situation that many of our customers find themselves in. They're busy trying to keep the lights on, keeping the business running. So and the bleeding edge is running away from them so fast that it's difficult to even know what's possible. And I have a couple of customer examples in mind that I could go into to illustrate that. But
I was going to say,
Peter,
Peter, I didn't realize that we were going to have basketballs, toupees, and a heart analogy all in this episode.
All in one.
Unexpected. But we would love to hear actual customer examples of what does that look
Sure.
like when it's down at the actual customer level.
To me, the example that I have in mind, it's a very large name in the index space that I'm not going to name, but that's not an atypical situation. Let's put it that way. When we were first invited to take a look at the problem, by that time, the AWS account team that was working with the customer had done an excellent job of introducing what is commonly referred to as the art of the possible, basically capturing the imagination of the technology leadership team with what the AWS stack might be able to bring to the table. That was juxtaposed against the set of constraints that they found themselves in. Essentially, the technology stack that they were operating on, it was on-prem, it didn't scale very well, and it was difficult to implement the use cases that the business was demanding more and more. So it wasn't a very sustainable situation. So by the time we got to the table and started discussions of, all right, what is it that we need to implement here? Essentially, we were talking about being able to ingest a large number of very diverse sources of data, to then manipulate those data sets in a particular way, check them for any quality issues, check them for any inconsistencies, importantly, provide interface to the data operations team at that customer's organization to fix any of those discrepancies or any other issues, and then serve up that data for consumption to power a number of important use cases. What we didn't understand was a huge gap between the team's understanding and what was possible just using the native services that AWS provides. And we were able to go from whiteboard, just hearing the explanations of the use cases, from that whiteboard to something that was demoable to a leadership team that was actually working with real data sets, performing, being cost efficient, serverless, nothing to manage in terms of infrastructure, in a space of 3 weeks. And it is still difficult to believe that was how fast we were able to go. But that's the power of modern platforms, specifically cloud.
And that's so important, because one of the main things that happens is that the speed of that change directly impacts the relationship of these key technology owners inside these organizations with their internal customer, which is the line of business decision maker. Alvin and I actually overlapped, I think, for some time around JP Morgan. And one of the previous experiences we used to have, and when we were, in our previous jobs, was we'd meet with the teams that were in the front lines at the quant desk. And the challenges they would face would often be, look, I just need access to my data. I need to be able to pull data from all of these sources. In order to just get analyzing on that complex scenario, I need to probably process information that I need weeks or months to access. This was a few years ago, but the speed at which some of the large banks are changing and transforming is also kind of replicating this change, which is let's make it really easy for our customers internal and inside the organization to access that information. Let's make it really easy for them to innovate. And I think some of the patterns you're calling out, Peter, are just right at the heart of that. Alvin, I don't know if you remember the old days, but oh my God, the early days when data was siloed was immensely complex.
It certainly was, Addy, and I think, Peter, you mentioned a great point about having kind of that interface that you can demonstrate up to the leadership, up to the line of business, and I'm curious to see if you see the same on your side. But one of the more advisable approaches that we've seen customers use, right, is leveraging kind of a line of business use case approach, right? So instead of modernizing your data architecture or your data management in one shot, right? You kind of say, hey, look, let's work backwards from a use case, right? And let's put together some of the more modern technologies, right? And prove it out for this one use case, prove it up to line of business, prove it up to management, right? And then once that's successful, right, you have buy-in from the line of business, and then you rinse and repeat, right? And with each iteration, you learn a little bit, right? The first one is not going to be perfect, right? Neither is the second one or third one, right? But as you kind of do this over and over and over again, right, you start getting better at it, and it becomes better and better. And kind of to your point, with technology moving so quickly, right? With each iteration, there might be new advancements in technology, right, that you want to start embedding, and then you can go kind of retroactive to the use cases you've already built in.
I couldn't agree more. We see this incremental approach, and specifically working backwards off of a known issue that the business has or known objective that they're after, definitely works very well. Generating buy-in, generating excitement, that buys you more trust and buys you more time and more space to continue to advance the solution, as opposed to, like you said, trying to boil the ocean. Boiling the ocean may not be very sellable. Of course, every individual situation is going to depend on the particular history, how we got there, what is the dynamic between the business and the technology. That is not an easy area to manage, and change in general is very difficult to manage. And I don't know if you can tell, but some of these slides there, these are Mark Schwartz's books. And he spends, as you very well know, he spends a lot of time covering this challenging dynamic, the relationship between what we typically refer to as business and tech. But like you said, yeah, this is a proven approach. If you can get something right on a small scale that's relatively low risk but high visibility, and if you can demo it successfully, then that buys you more credibility, that buys you more space to do more. And that was more or less the pattern that unfolded with that particular customer, for instance.
Yeah, I think I was just going to kind of call it out. It's one of those. There's an interesting report by Everest that calls out over 40% of technology decisions are moving towards the line of business. And so, you want to have that line of business stakeholder as part of the early conversations. The product teams that own the tools are going to use as part of those early conversations. And I'm going to go back to one of the most common internal analogies at Amazon, which is, to create that two-pizza team. How do we make sure that when we're getting started, we have a small group that represents the technology capability that's going to solve this problem with trusted partners, combined with a line of business or product team that is going to use this product in the long term? And so by bringing that group together and kind of innovating very rapidly, you're actually able to see very quick outputs, and you have your stakeholder alignment as part of that process, ingrained.
Couldn't agree more. Again, the particular example I'm thinking of, the team that was able to knock out the first pipelines in that particular case was just 2 or 3 people. And they spent a couple of weeks, or maybe more than a couple of weeks, in very close discussions with the product teams to understand the requirements, to understand what the business actually needs, and then working through the technology background and constraints, and then going literally through a drawing board to design and then prototype. It doesn't take a huge crowd to do that. In fact, the pattern that we're seeing is if you're seeing huge crowds doing things are probably not going very well, because of our tendency as people, as human beings, sometimes throw resources at a problem when the problem isn't being solved sufficiently quickly for our tastes, would tend to throw, be it money or people or whatever it is, at the problem, where the solution may be in something else, like changing focus, zooming back out, zooming back in, whatever it is.
So Peter, to that point, there's a question that came in through the chat of what are the design patterns, or what is when we talk about it in AWS terms, we often talk about there's no compression algorithm for experience. What are the things that DataArt has experience in that become superpowers when customers actually engage with you?
That's a good question. I don't want to sound like I'm reading off of a marketing brochure, so how about I try to keep it anecdotal.
Great.
So one important aspect that we find actually makes an impact on the customer and the outcomes for the customer is how well we're able to function alongside our partners in an engagement. I've been blessed in that for the majority of the last 6 years or so, almost all of my time is spent working with both DataArt teams, but also AWS teams serving some of the same customers. And so I would say, and this is based on my own sort of intuition and introspection, but also things I've heard from customers and partners, being able to do this, like it takes three to tango sort of thing, being able to do it together with a partner to solve for a customer challenge and get something over the line is actually not as easy as it sounds. So AWS has a number of programs and incentives that are built in, and they're designed to de-risk and accelerate and take the toil and the pain out of what's already very difficult transformations that the customers are attempting. And being able to align to those and figure out how they work. I'll mention Migration Acceleration Program, for instance, right? It can be quite impactful, but it can be quite difficult just to manage the bureaucracy. So being able to navigate that with customers and simplify and take the risk and uncertainty and fear out of the process by saying, we got this. We'll tell you what you need to do when you need to do it, but it's going to be a breeze. Don't worry about it. Being able to say that actually goes a long way. The customer experience is dramatically improved through the process.
And I think this is an important kind of factor to consider, which is there's a distinct air gap of partners who have showcased their capabilities on AWS, and we recognize that through the industry competencies. DataArt is a financial services competency partner. What they've been able to do is really convey to the market that not only do we understand AWS's services, we understand that in the context of the financial services industry. And something that we work really hard in our teams is to understand our partners' capability and then make sure that we're kind of cross-mapping how we could really accelerate between technology consulting partners all on AWS. The end objective is, like, when a customer is solving for a line of business challenge, we're able to say, hey, here's a combination that can help you. But it's not just us in any scenario advising this. What we're doing is kind of broadcasting this. So our goal is making it really easy through channels like these, kind of bring that story out, but simultaneously being, on the ground, teaming up and investing in deals and individual POCs to kind of make sure that that translates to impact on the ground. This is kind of a great way in which we also team up both at starting the business conversation at the early POC stage, but then I think, Peter, as you called out, that map funding, which kind of kicks in at large scale migration scenarios, which is something that we're able to put skin in the game in as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
ahead,
I just wanted to call out another fact. So what we're also trying to do is see repeatable patterns of sort of similar challenges that customers are trying to solve for, and then, if not productize it, we're not a product firm. We're ultimately professional services. Will remain professional services, but there are things you can do, such as solution accelerators or patterns or blueprints that you can bring to bear in a situation that calls for it, where there's a similar use case or a similar technology challenge. So we're very happy to be working with some folks on Karen's team, specifically to build those solutions and put them in the hands of our customers.
Awesome. We'll call out Steve. Nice job, Steve Ricardo, on working with all of our partners. So also, DataArt has done a really great job of indicating some of the differentiated services you've offered and the experience. So if you're curious at the more technical level of understanding what DataArt has done in the past, if you're looking up AWS and DataArt, you'll see some of the case studies, actual customer examples where we can talk about some of the tech stack that's underneath some of those accelerators and helps customers to move their data faster, for example, the first time, and solve for some of those data pattern movements that you only get the actual differentiated experience and actually leveraging your data once you've had that initial migration happen. So the migration is important for sure. And we talked about obviously going through the migration acceleration program is a great way to kind of lower the friction. But then also once you get your data in the cloud is really where the differentiated line of business problem solving that Addy and Alvin were talking about occurs.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize another thing is that our customers are really never done, meaning it's not something that can be delivered and then just operate indefinitely. We're dealing with technology. The fabric of technology is evolving constantly, and so what our customers find themselves needing to do is reskill and upskill all the time. So this is not a trivial challenge at all. It's not about just the deliverable itself, whatever the project at hand may be. It's about the lasting capability. And so it takes all of us working very hard to support our customers for them to continue to succeed.
And I think I'm going to feel free to kind of put in a quick plug there, right? I think I really want to encourage anyone from the audience listening to consider becoming a partner to AWS, right? Because there's definitely customers and how they're going to see value, but there's a very good chance that you can be a partner and actually, grow your own capabilities with AWS to support customers. And so what we do is we actually maintain large repositories of technical assets, domain assets that are accessible to our partner network. Once you register, you're able to progress through and actually access a number of these trainings that help you kind of get started. And a number of our financial services experts and partner experts are available to support our partners who are, strengthening their skills and showcasing their specializations. We'll help out both at that training phase where they're building new solutions, but also then marketing and evangelizing that and driving go-to-market and co-sell motions. So a lot of that journey kicks off with kind of being with the partner network and starting that off early on.
That's a great plug. I support.
Excellent. And given the number of diverse geographies that we have watching here today, we obviously have customers who are looking for partners all around the world. So that's one of the things that is really great about our financial services team is that we are global. So Addy and I are happy to answer any of your questions. So keep popping them in the chat here. We'll have this afterwards as well. So thanks everybody that has been joining us around the world. So we have about 2 minutes left. I want to make sure that we give Alvin and Peter both 60 seconds to give us a recap of what they want to leave us with before we head out for the day. Alvin, do you want to go first? And then Peter, you're going to end us off.
Yeah, happy to, Karen. And you know what? I probably won't do a recap, but maybe I'll do a little bit of a forward-thinking one. And Peter, I'm curious to see if you've seen this or even if you've used this with customers. Karen and Addy mentioned that data governance, well-governed data, right, is really the foundation for good machine learning and good generative AI, right? But we've actually seen the reverse be true as well, right? Is that we've actually seen customers leverage generative AI to help with data integration and data management, right? So a good example there is if you have data coming from two different source systems, right, and it may be named one thing in one system and something else in another system. In the capital market space, take something like trade date and execution date, right? It means the same thing, but two different naming conventions, right? We've seen generative AI be very effective at understanding that this is actually the same field, right? And then being able to kind of integrate those data sets, very, very nicely. So I'll kind of leave it at that, right? Is I think generative AI is going to be, very helpful, right, in the future around things like data management. And the data integration. But yeah, Peter, happy to see if you've seen the same on your side.
I agree. It can, but remember the law of the caravan. The caravan moves at the speed of the slowest ship. So if you use generative AI to streamline or automate a link in the chain, but the remainder is behind, fundamentals are fundamentals for a reason.
Yep.
That's going to dilute any gains that you get from the application of generative AI. So get the fundamentals right, and AWS and partners like Snowflake and consulting partners, hopefully like ourselves, can help you with that.
That was the best recap and way for us to end our hour. This hour flew by. I think we could have talked with you for a very much longer session, but thanks everybody for joining today. Please remember to mark your calendars. We'll be live on Tuesdays from 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific time every other week. So next 2 weeks from now, we will have media and entertainment, games and sports. And a month from now, we will be back with financial services partners.